through it with you till Friday. Today is Monday. We are moving close to the Christmas holiday, and I know that some people have already broken off from work till January 2nd. I can't say that I don't envy you, but at the same time I understand that as a human being, sometimes your body needs a rest. So make the best out of these few weeks that you're going to have out of work, so that by the time you're back to work in January, you are refreshed and energized. And of course, speaking about refreshed and energized, Chirabo Robert Nyonyintano is back with us this morning, and he looks better than the last time I saw him. So I believe that he is, in Uganda we say akubye kumatu, he is in better shape. But of course, I'm joined by Chantal Olive Akandinda and Joram Paul Sonko here on Good Morning Uganda. Welcome back, Chirabo.
Oh, thank you so much. I really missed you people, and of course our lovely viewers that wake up every morning to see us. It feels good being here. It feels good having the team around, and of course knowing that yes, there's so many thousands of people that wake up every morning just to have a look at what we've prepared for them. That's right. Good morning, Chantal Olive.
Good morning, Olive. How are you?
I'm great. How are you this
morning?
I'm
very well. How was your weekend?
It was lovely. How was yours?
I had it was a bit long, but it was a good one. I had to drop out of time, but it was a good one. Although I could use some more sleep, I'm not lying.
Okay, some more sleep on Monday morning. Interesting.
I did a day.
You're the people.
I did a day between Sunday and Monday. I can assure you. Though the only challenge is, if I got that day, I don't know if I would not wake up the following day feeling like I need another day in between. I don't know how that goes, but yeah, I need a day between Sunday and Monday. If not, I could use Monday as my day off. Just saying.
Interesting.
I put the memo out to my bosses.
I actually know some places of work where Monday is an off day, but usually it is like, let's say, salon business where they're very busy over the weekend, and it is now slow on Monday, so everyone takes Monday off, and then they are back to work on Tuesday. Good morning, Mr. Joram Paul.
Yes, good morning, Monica. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm well. I'm looking forward to this particular week. The weekend was a beautiful one as well. So looking deeper into what this month is actually going to offer us, as you can definitely see, you'll get to realize that it's something that you should look at. But besides that, I'm looking at the month of December also coming to an end. You realize we're only left with 2 weeks, surprisingly.
That's true. Today is the 11th already.
So when you look at it in a way that we're only left with 2 weeks, again you wonder what next for us who have not met some of these particular let's say resolutions we had actually put aside at the start of the year. But maybe we shall wait for the start of 2024 and shoot for the stars again.
I have a question for you though. Did you make any progress throughout the year? Did you try to make efforts to achieve some of those resolutions? If you did, you should pat yourself on the shoulder and give yourself some grace, because you can still proceed and make it work in the coming years.
Yeah. I'm definitely hopeful that in 2024 I'm going to definitely work on those that I ideally failed. Not for my own making. I want to believe that maybe the right time will come next year. But for this particular one, I'm really thankful for one, good health, I should say. Good health, life, and opportunities that have actually arise in here. And of course, also looking deep into the fact that I'm also inspiring Ugandans here. So that's a very big one as well.
Yeah, it's a big this year.
Something that usually I laugh about. Many people are very optimistic that, well, the next year is going to be better. The next year is going to be better. But one thing I learned is if you've not put measures in place to have a better 2024, mere completion of a calendar year does not yield success.
That's true.
You know that because you've lived 360 days, automatically the other is going to be better. You must have laid out a plan that is going to make 2024 better than 2023. But just assuming this year is gone, so I'm very sure next year will be better. It doesn't work in my world of dreams.
We believe in the spirit of manifestation. You always have to manifest something you want to achieve. And the more you speak positivity about your life, the chances are you're definitely going to wake up in the morning thinking about what you have. Because if you don't plan, you won't work on something.
Is the effort that
yes, I have to
put in.
Yeah.
You know, when you manifest something,
I'm
you
just
have to make sure you
thinking
put the
that
effort.
because 2023 is gone, now 2024 is going to be a better year. If I am a farmer,
Yes.
Now, if you've not bought seed to sow in March, if you've not planned so much and automatically believe that it's going to be a better year, then definitely you've not prepared. So as people make resolutions, as we come to the end of this year, in these 2 weeks, what measure are you setting in place to have a better 2024?
Yeah, what Robert is basically saying is that we shouldn't just manifest. Manifestation is good, but maybe for me, I don't like to call them resolutions. I like to call them goals. Okay, this year, what are my goals? What do I want to achieve this particular year? And then what do I put in place to ensure that I achieve these goals? Those are the measures Robert is talking about, because most of us are lost in the frenzy of making resolutions. This year I'll do this, but what mechanisms have you put in place to ensure that you achieve or realize some of these goals that you have put in place? So right now is the time you should be having these conversations with yourself. Sit yourself down and start planning for the year that is coming up ahead. But we don't want to ruin your festive mood. We want you to have a good time, because Good Morning Uganda is here to give you that, of course, on top of informing you. And speaking about informing you, here at Good Morning Uganda, we usually have news on the local and international scene. So about this minute, Robert Chirabonyonyintono will take us through the local news stories.
Well, what better way to start local stories than the enthronement and consecration of the new bishop for Namirembe Diocese. Now, Venerable Canon Moses Banje was consecrated the 6th bishop of Namirembe Diocese. The Archbishop of the Church of Uganda, the Most Reverend Dr. Stephen Samuel Kazimba Mugalu, consecrated Vinca Canon Moses Banje at St. Paul's Cathedral, Namirembe. The Bishop-elect of Namirembe Diocese, Venerable Moses Banje, was ushered in St. Paul's Cathedral, Namirembe, and represented to the Archbishop of the Church of Uganda, Most Right Reverend Stephen Samuel Kazimba, by the acting Bishop of Luwero Diocese, Bishop James Williams Sebagala, and the Bishop of East Busoga Diocese, Bishop Paul Hannington Subi. A minute to his election was read by the Provincial Secretary, Reverend Canon Captain William Onenge, for confirmation. Venerable Canon Moses Banje was first taken through the oath of office during the decoration oath and the oath of undertaking. Following the constitution of the Church of Uganda, Archbishop Kazimba examined Venerable Canon Moses Banje to see whether he is fit to be consecrated bishop. Archbishop Kazimba declared Venerable Canon Moses Banje fully installed bishop of Namirembe Diocese and was handed the bishop's staff and later sat on the cathedral chair.
Now moving on, Kampala Capital City Authority is working to ensure that all the physical works around the Central Business District be completed on schedule as the country prepares for the January 2024 Non-Aligned Movement and G77 Plus China Summits. For a while, members of the general public have pointed at government for failing to solve the issue of floods in Kampala. But why have there been a persistent burden to the city dwellers? Kampala Capital City Authority has started addressing the shortfalls in the drainage system. Engineer Maurice Kairania, the Deputy Director for Roads and Drainage at Kampala Capital City Authority, says there is need to revise the city's physical plan. Kampala City is the face of Uganda, so such efforts will put the city and the country at the forefront.
And moving on to matters of poverty eradication, there has been a new tracking mechanism in the process of parish development model funds, leaving government coffers to the beneficiaries. The PDM and NDP3 implementation mechanism serves as a coordinated and participatory effort by both state and non-state actors to achieve inclusive development in Uganda. Sourced from the country's national revenue offers, PDM funds from Bank of Uganda through commercial banks reach parishes across the nation on quarterly basis. On December 14th, 2022, Post Bank was the first to release funds to PDM beneficiaries in Kayunga. The entire process was digitalized. Beneficiaries received funds from the bank upon the assent of a group's chairperson. Disbursement involves the identification of beneficiaries who are granted a grace period to repay the fund. PDM has integrated a sustainable number of previous unbanked individuals into the money economy. However, challenges have emerged in the disbursement process. There are reports of individuals receiving amounts less than the President's directed minimum of 1 million shillings.
And lastly, now in local news stories, Female Lawyers Network Uganda has celebrated contributions made by women in legal profession on the theme, the pursuit of women in law strategic empowerment agenda, adopting an inclusive and conducive legal space. The dinner was graced by Minister for East African Affairs Rebecca Kadaga and decorated lawyers and judges at Hotel Africana in Kampala. Well, that does it for our local news. Now we delve into international news with Chantal Olive.
Now, internationally, a fierce fighting has killed nearly 300 Palestinians in the past 24 hours in Gaza as the Palestinian armed group Hamas and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu exchanged threats. Israeli raids continued across the besieged territory on Sunday, including in northern Gaza, where entire neighborhoods have been flattened by airstrikes and where ground troops that have been operating for more than 6 weeks continue to face heavy resistance from Hamas fighters. Gaza's Health Ministry spokesman Ashraf told Al Jazeera in a telephone interview that 297 people were killed and more than 550 wounded in the past 24 hours in Gaza, bringing the death toll since the start of the war on October 7th to more than 18,000, the majority of them women and children. Now, away from that, Donald Trump changed his mind about testifying in his own defense in his New York fraud case on Monday, he said, announcing that he will not take the stand as expected because he has nothing more to say. The 77-year-old posted the surprise statement on Truth Social on Sunday, adding that he has already testified to everything in the ongoing trials against him, his eldest sons Don and Eric, and the other Trump Organization executives. Trump was questioned last month by the prosecution, which has accused him and the other defendants of exaggerating the value of their real estate assets by billions of dollars to obtain more favorable bank loans and insurance terms. For 4 hours on November 6th, Trump sparred with prosecutors with his acrimonious answers, at times earning rebukes from Judge Arthur, who warned the current Republican frontrunner that this is not a political rally. Moving on, polling stations opened Sunday for Egyptians to vote in a presidential election overshadowed by war in neighboring Gaza, and with little doubt that the incumbent Abdel Fattah al-Sisi will secure a third term. In a country gripped by the most severe financial crisis in its recent history, inflation has hovered nearly 40% after the currency lost half its value and drove up the cost of imports. The economy is the crux of Egyptians' concerns. Even before the current crisis, about 2/3 of the country's nearly 106 million people were living in or below the poverty line. Before polls opened at 9 a.m., dozens of voters had already crowded in front of the polling stations in a central Cairo school amidst heavy security, an AFP correspondent reported. Voting will take place from Sunday till Tuesday between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. or 7 to 19 hours GMT each day, with the official results announced on December 18th. Now, speaking matters climate, a raft of new pledges announced at the COP28 Climate Summit will not be enough on their own to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, according to the International Energy Agency, as the talks headed into the final phase on Sunday. So far, 130 countries have agreed to triple renewables and double the rate of energy efficiency improvements, while 50 oil and gas companies have agreed to cut out methane emissions and eliminate routine flaring by 2030 under the Oil and Gas Decarbonization Charter. If everyone delivered on their commitments, it would lower global energy-related greenhouse gas emissions by 4 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent in 2030, the REA said in an analysis. That is about a third of the emissions gap that needs to be closed in the next 6 years to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels as agreed in the 2015 Paris Agreement. That is it for climate news and also what is happening across different parts of the country in the world.
Thank you so much, Chantal Olive. And as you mentioned that Egyptians are going to the polls to cast their ballots and choose their next leader, it's also important to note that our former vice president, that is Dr. Speciosa Naigaga, is leading the AU COMESA contingent to Egypt to ensure that there is a watchful eye and that the elections go as expected. So we hope that there will be something we can learn from that as a country, since we are also headed to our own polls come 2026. But that being said, Jerome Paul Sonko, what do you have for us this morning in the press?
Well, now it's time for us to check in with the local dailies as well as what is making headlines across East Africa. I start with the New Vision here in Uganda with the headline, Minister Ntabazi says CID has taken over the case files as 30 members of parliament probed over cooperatives cash. Then Banja sets priorities for Namirembe Diocese, a pictorial of the new bishop. And then also, that is at the front page, then Jesus' Africa book launched in Kenya. Then besides that, in the health perspective, can infertility be prevented? As row erupts over letter banning judge from hearing new cases. That is with the New Vision this morning. Then moving further, the Daily Monitor, cases of child abuse overwhelm government center. That is according to information by the Daily Monitor. Healthy living in herbal medicine. Is herbal medicine good for you? The experts weigh in. Now, male bosses using trips to harass female staff, says minister. You can read about that in the Daily Monitor. An interesting report there. Military police named in crime as criminals are now in uniform. Another report by the Daily Monitor today. On the throne, Bishop Banja takes over reigns at Namirembe. Pictorial of what did happen yesterday as he was being ordained. Then in the other news, what the Democratic Republic of Congo election means and what you need to know about it. That is with the Daily Monitor today. Read about the same. Now in the regional news, no meet in Chotera at Christmas over the anthrax, as Ankole residents decry bad roads. Now in the Lizard, is that why delegations are huge? Read about that in the Daily Monitor. Let's cross the borders now to Kenya. The Daily Nation highlights Raila under siege. Azimio leader Raila Odinga is a man under pressure. Some of his coalition allies have refused to support his decision to endorse the Bomber Stocks report over its failure to include ways of cutting taxes to bring down the cost of living. Now, inside President's ambitious project to raise 1.5 trillion Kenyan shillings through e-citizen. Trapped in floods. Nation staffer tells of Lamu ordeal after they were left stranded. Then also in the other news with the Daily Nation, new push to make male circumcision mandatory and free. Then COP28, activists decry slow progress at the forum. Then at the port, global shipping lines opt for Mombasa on efficiency. Then lastly, from our press review this morning, the Citizen newspaper that is in Tanzania, why 1.3 trillion Tanzanian shillings cement project has yet to take off. And then also Mpango reappears, hits out at malicious falsehoods. Then read about Samia issuing directives on El Nino rains as World Bank Vice President confident on poverty reduction. The National Education NIT pledges to modernize teaching methods. Then your health risk Kandad's drinking effect for Wato development. That is in the Citizen today. The national aftermath, Hanang disaster death toll climbs to 87. That is what we have for you in the press review this morning from the locals here in Uganda, as well as that across the East African region.
And now that we have given you an update on what's happening in the world of news, now we give you a song to inspire your morning, and that is White Christmas by Human Nature. We'll be right back.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Live from the UBC studios here at Nile Avenue in the heart of Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. My name is Olive Monica Najuma. Thank you and you're welcome to this new week. Hoping that you had a wonderful weekend and of course that you are fresh and ready for a new week. Well, here on Good Morning Uganda, we are ready to serve you. We are ready to entertain you and educate you. We are ready to start this week with you and of course go through it with you till Friday. Today is Monday. We are moving close to the Christmas holiday, and I know that some people have already broken off from work till January 2nd. I can't say that I don't envy you, but at the same time I understand that as a human being sometimes your body needs a rest. So make the best out of these few weeks that you're going to have out of work, so that by the time you're back to work in January you are refreshed and energized. And of course, speaking about refreshed and energized, Chirabo Robert Nyonyintano is back with us this morning, and he looks better than the last time I saw him. So I believe that he is, in Uganda we say akubye kumatu, he is in better shape. But of course I'm joined by Chantal Olive Akandinda and Jerome Paul Sonko here on Good Morning Uganda. Welcome back, Chirabo.
Oh, thank you so much. I really missed you people, and of course our lovely viewers that wake up every morning to see us. It feels good being here. It feels good having the team around, and of course knowing that yes, there's so many thousands of people that wake up every morning just to have a look at what we've prepared for them.
That's right. Good morning, Chantal Olive.
Good morning, Olive. How are you?
I'm great. How are you this
I'm
morning?
very well. How was your weekend?
It was lovely. How was yours?
I had it was a bit long, but it was a good one. I had to travel out of town, but it was a good one. Although I could use some more sleep, I'm not lying.
Okay, some more sleep on Monday morning. Interesting.
I did a day.
You're the people.
I did a day between Sunday and Monday. I can assure you. Though the only challenge is if I got that day, I don't know if I would not wake up the following day feeling like I need another day in between. I don't know how that goes, but yeah, I need a day between Sunday and Monday. If not, I could use Monday as my day off. Just saying.
Interesting.
I put the memo out to my bosses.
I actually know some places of work where Monday is an off day, but usually it is like, let's say, salon business where they're very busy over the weekend and it is now slow on Monday, so everyone takes Monday off and then they are back to work on Tuesday. Good morning, Mr. Jerome Paul.
Yes, good morning, Monica. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you? you?
I'm well. I'm looking forward to this this particular week. The weekend was a beautiful one as well. So looking deeper into what this month is actually going to offer us, as you can definitely see, you'll get to realize that it's something that you should look at. But besides that, I'm looking at the month of December also coming to an end. You realize we're only left with 2 weeks, surprisingly.
That's true. Today is the 11th
yes.
already.
So when you look at it in a way that we're only left with 2 weeks, again, you wonder what next for us who have not met some of these particular, let's say, resolutions we had actually put aside at the start of the year. But maybe we shall wait for the start of 2024 and shoot for the stars again.
I have a question for you though. Did you make any progress throughout the year? Did you try to make efforts to achieve some of those resolutions? If you did, you should pat yourself on the shoulder and give yourself some grace, because you can still proceed and make it work in the coming years.
Yeah. I'm definitely hopeful that in 2024 I'm going to definitely work on those that I ideally failed. Not for my own making. I want to believe that maybe the right time will come next year. But for this particular one, I'm really thankful for one, good health, I should say. Good health, life, and opportunities that have actually arisen in here. And of course, also looking deep into the fact that I'm also inspiring Ugandans here. So that's a very big one as well.
Yeah, it's a big one this year.
Something that usually I laugh about. Many people are very optimistic that, well, the next year is going to be better. The next year is going to be better. But one thing I learned is if you've not put measures in place
Yes.
to have a better 2024, mere completion of a calendar year does not yield success.
That's true.
You know that because you've lived 360 days, automatically the other is going to be better. You must have laid out a plan that is going to make 2024 better than 2023. But just assuming this year is gone, so I'm very sure next year will be better. It doesn't work in my world of dreams.
You know, we believe in the spirit of manifestation. You always have to manifest something you want to achieve. And the more you speak positivity about your life, the chances are you're definitely going to wake up in the morning thinking about what you have. Because if you don't plan, you won't work on something.
What is the effort that
yes, I have to
put in?
Yeah.
You know, when you manifest something, you
I'm
have to
just
make sure you put
thinking
the
that
effort.
because 2023 is gone, now 2024 is going to be a better year. If I am a farmer,
Yes.
Now, if you've not bought seed to sow in March, if you've not planned so much, and automatically believe that it's going to be a better year, then definitely you've not prepared. So as people make resolutions, as we come to the end of this year, in these 2 weeks, what measure are you setting in place to have a better 2024?
Yeah, what Robert is basically saying is that we shouldn't just manifest. Manifestation is good, but maybe for me, I don't like to call them resolutions. I like to call them goals. Okay, this year, what are my goals? What do I want to achieve this particular year? And then what do I put in place to ensure that I achieve these goals? Those are the measures Robert is talking about, because most of us are lost in the frenzy of making resolutions. This year I'll do this, but what mechanisms have you put in place to ensure that you achieve or realize some of these goals that you have put in place? So right now is the time you should be having these conversations with yourself. Sit yourself down and start planning for the year that is coming up ahead. But we don't want to ruin your festive mood. We want you to have a good time, because Good Morning Uganda is here to give you that, of course, on top of informing you. And speaking about informing you, here at Good Morning Uganda, we usually have news on the local and international scene. So about this minute, Robert Chirabonyonyintono will take us through the local news stories.
Well, what better way to start local stories than the enthronement and consecration of the new bishop for Namirembe. Diocese now Venerable Canon Moses Banje was consecrated the 6th bishop of Namirembe Diocese. The Archbishop of the Church of Uganda, the Most Reverend Dr. Stephen Samuel Kazimba Mugalu, consecrated Vinca Canon Moses Banje at St. Paul's Cathedral, Namirembe. The Bishop-elect of Namirembe Diocese, Venerable Moses Banje, was ushered in St. Paul's Cathedral, Namirembe, and represented to the Archbishop of the Church of Uganda, Most Right Reverend Stephen Samuel Kazimba, by the acting Bishop of Luwero Diocese, Bishop James Sebagala, Bishop James Williams Sebagala, and the Bishop of East Busoga Diocese, Bishop Paul Hannington Subi. A minute to his election was read by the Provincial Secretary, Reverend Canon Captain William Onenge, for confirmation. Venerable Canon Moses Banja was first taken through the oath of office during the decoration oath and the oath of undertaking. Following the constitution of the Church of Uganda, Archbishop Kazimba examined Venerable Canon Moses Banja to see whether he is fit to be consecrated bishop. Archbishop Kazimba declared Venerable Canon Moses Banja fully installed Bishop of Namirembe Diocese and was handed the bishop's staff and later sat on the cathedral chair.
Now moving on, Kampala Capital City Authority is working to ensure that all the physical works around the Central Business District be completed on schedule as the country prepares for the January 2024 Non-Aligned Movement and G77 Plus China Summit. Put police as #1 as the most corrupt government agency. Why is that? Why do we have something like that? Why do we have that cancer festering at our police force, and how is this affecting the service delivery that police is supposed to give to Ugandans in the grand scheme of things? That is the conversation we want to have this morning with you, and I'll go to my colleague, that is Joram Paul. And first of all, the big question here is, police is a government agency, so one would assume that government should actually have its claws deeply, rooted into its people to ensure that they, and first of all, they're not corrupt, and secondly, that what is the primary role of police? To maintain law. Thank you. So why is it that police is continuously being named as a corrupt agency?
When you look at the fact that you've mentioned the core values of law and order, and law is simply promoting, by promoting law, that means they have to uphold justice.
That's true.
And with the report that you've actually put out there, it shows that they are contributing to the delayed justice or to the failure of Ugandans achieving this justice, which means in the short run and long run, the police is actually failing to uphold or to promote the law perspective of it. Now let's also get to the order here. When you're promoting law and then you're promoting, you're ideally supposed to also promote the order and onto which this law is supposed to be, pursued, or it is supposed to be upheld. And when you ask why is it that the police is actually the same body, or why are we in such a situation, if I may say, there are lots of contributing factors that I would believe have led us into such circumstances. When you look at this submission, which was actually made, it was coming through from it was actually heading to the Justice, Law and Order sector, which is under the Ministry of Justice and which is under the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. So all these are reports that are clearly showing that Ugandans who go out to report to the police are either not getting the justice because the police is already the corrupt entity. Now, looking at the contributing factors, one would clearly say, to me, again, I would clearly see it as the fact that we do not have, even when you look at the Justice, Law and Order sector, they've clearly come out and say that when you look at the level onto which the, technology is actually transitioning or growing, you do realize that at times criminals are far ahead of us as a country. That at times you realize that the criminals may have an idea about how to maneuver through certain things even before the government steps in. And this is not something you can ideally, try to put onto the government at a point, simply because with the emerging trends, there's a lot of bureaucracy within the government that makes systems delay in a way or two. So when you look at the fact that why are we in such a situation, when you look at the technology levels, you do realize that some of these particular, criminals, whatever, situation they're in, they end up going fast before the police. Now, how does the police come into, how does the corruption now come into? Now, in most cases, once someone is actually in position to pull through crime, they have a chance of, bribing the police in one way or the other.
How so? How do they do this?
Here's the thing. Now, in most cases, when you look at the criminals who have actually, for example, in the cyberspace, most of these ones are people who are, financially up there in relation to how they pull off in regards to, let's say, cybercrime. And once police fails at it, you do realize it's very easy for them to bribe the police, especially when you look through the countrywide areas whereby we do not have a lot of, police technology in there. And at times, police is actually upbeat by how fast these people are. And for them to actually cover up the case, most of them end up, bribing the police. Now, you would ask me, why is it easy to bribe the police? This goes back to the quality, or let's say to the level into which they're actually, providing their duties as police officers. We've a couple of times been here talking about the state into which some of the government bodies, operate. And we've also mentioned about the fact that police as well is still having some things that they are lacking. When you look at the welfare of some of the police officers, look at where they are staying, you look at the element of less pay for some of those particular officers who are always deployed in some of the areas. So it becomes very, very difficult for some of them to say no to a bribe. Something that, again, we shouldn't normalize, or that we should not look at as a sign that, okay, if you're not being paid as much, or if at all your welfare isn't good, it doesn't mean you're supposed to be accepting these bribes, because it's going to be the end of the day, it's going to be the order of the day. But when you look at the kind of the welfare they're having, you look at the state into which they are living in, sometimes the criminals use this as a card to bribe their way through these officers, because someone is actually going to offer you, let's say, a huge check, or let's say some good money that can solve a problem that you have as an officer at that time. And then you get to realize that at this time, it starts affecting the Justice Department in the country, whereby if a criminal has more money, they're going to buy an officer who is likely to forget about his duty at that time.
When we say that police is the most corrupt agents of government, and now let's narrow it down to the police, yes. Do we have sections or departments in the police force that are more corrupt, or that are the bad apples that are making the entire police force look bad?
I think it is now a collective thing. Because even when you look at the traffic police, we all know what happens on the road.
Chantal, what do you think?
And when you go on to those that actually on the marine department, let's say on, or let's say
is
those,
the marine department part of the Uganda police force?
Let's say those who are actually deployed, not the marine department. I'm saying there are some police officers who are deployed to help out the marine department, for example.
Yes, but there should be still. According to this gentleman, he says that the Criminal Investigations Department, CID, is the most corrupt. He says that is according to him. I don't know if there is a wider report that shows that this is the part.
Because they're into investigations.
But wouldn't you say that he probably has a point, because this is the department that is mostly interacted with by people who visit police stations?
from depending on the angle from which you look at it, someone who interfaces with the traffic officers most will probably say the same thing. But if we're talking about justice, if we're talking about preservation of human rights, then the criminal investigations department this time round is likely to take the fall. Why? Because if I come to police and I report and something needs to be investigated, if it dies, I mean, in the air, then definitely the department has to have answers for me at the end of the day. So and the biggest percentage of the cases that are presented to the police definitely require investigation. So when you look at it, when you come to think about it, maybe I wouldn't really put my foot down and say it is the most corrupt department. But well, when you look at the level at which it interfaces with the crimes and the reports that come in, it might actually take the crown.
Now, I've had allegations that first of all, it's not an allegation. One thing I know for sure is that a police bond is supposed to be free, and many people are entitled to it. Now, the allegation out there is that some police officers have actually monetized the bonds, especially when they're dealing with people who don't know their rights or who don't understand the law. Have you heard of this allegation, and is there a substance to it?
I've heard of the allegation, and it would be bad if I stood and accused, because maybe I may not have evidence. But we've had people who have had cases, relatives and friends.
That's why it is an allegation.
Yes, relatives and friends who have told me the same thing. I have seen the same things with my eyes. The unfortunate bit is that it happens at a time when you least expect it to happen. You can't even have evidence to even push it further. And at a point you may not know if you push it further, if you're going to get solutions or not. The problem with corruption, it's like a cancer, yeah, and actually a cancer maybe may not affect the person next to you, but it's like some infectious disease that the person next to you could be having, getting the person next to them. So for some of these offices, you realize that it starts from the top. So even when you get to the top, you present your issue, and you're not going to get solutions by the end of everything, because yes, you presented your issue, you probably have even some evidence attached to it, but you may not get solutions.
Now, still going back to how police is hindering justice in terms of defending human rights, this gentleman that is Omar Mohammed Tati, the Koboko District Secretary of the Environment, Water and Natural Resources, also noted that some police officers make case files disappear. Case files of human rights violations, including defilement and rape, cases after receipt of alleged bribes, making many victims and relatives not get the justice that they deserve. These are strong allegations against the police.
Yeah, they're strong. By the way, let me also get back to the other question that you asked. It does seem like it is not a collective thing to put the entire police, because the entire police has got over 18 directorates. Now, the 18 directorates here, this is where even the CID is falling under, or what you could put as a department. And by the look of things here, some directorates may not ideally even be in this, because there's a Directorate of Information, Communication and Technology. That ideally isn't. We shall look at that from the cyber
because
space.
It is ICT, you think they...
No, I'm saying, you also look at the Directorate of Traffic and Road Safety. We know that one is also among. But looking at the Directorate of Police Health Services, Forensic Services, there is not so much of, corruption allegations coming in from some of these departments, though I'm not ruling out the fact.
Could it be because they don't directly
I think some of them are not.
People?
Yeah, I think, especially forensic services at times, it depends on situations as well. But when you look at the Directorate of Criminal Investigations and then the Directorate of Crime Intelligence, now this is where the entire allegations spark from. Why again? When you look at the allegations, like you say, they are too huge. Let's say they are big. They are big enough, strong enough
against the police force.
When you look at someone saying some officers even hide files, Now, the element of
interrupting
with justice,
Yes.
interrupting with justice comes in. The question goes back to how does this happen? And what should we do to ensure that we are ending up this?
But before we even go into how, what should we do to end
how are
this,
we here?
How are we as individuals, as civilians, also enabling the corruption in the police force?
No, you see, why we are enabling the corruption, it is
How?
because
Yes.
why we are.
How? First of all, how are we? Okay, and why?
Why? Okay, the how is when you do have the money, you definitely know with these particular CID officers that you're actually working with, it is very easy to bribe your way through.
That is how, yes.
That is how.
The moment I know who
Yes.
to talk to and how much
Because
I'm
remember,
supposed
you're
to give them.
interacting with them directly.
Are we saying that anyone has a price? At least, is that the word on the street?
Because when you look at the allegations, that seem
beyond
like
reasonable doubt. I mean, that's why we keep having these corruption cases cropping up and the reports cropping up every now and then. But the look of things, these people actually have a price.
And then when you look at also the why do we have the situation here, is when you also look back to some of the allegations, they will clearly show you that at times when these criminals, or let's say in most cases, when you look at the real criminals at times who bail themselves out of, out of police, and they're using, let's say, the CID in context here, you do realize that once they come through and they know they are likely to face jail, or they will go in court and lose, they will have to, try to convince these officers that, you know what, if in case I offered you this and this, what would it be? Because when you look at the fact that someone is hiding a file, no one is going to hide a file unless there is something they've actually received at the end of it all.
Well, I would like for you to join this conversation. We are asking, what is your take on the notion that corruption in the police is hampering justice? What is your take on the notion that corruption in the police force is hampering justice? You can join the conversation through WhatsApp number 0709-602-592, and on the X app, the hashtag is UBCGMU. We'd like to hear from you. And of course, for now, my colleagues have a lot to say about why there is corruption in the police force. Jerome Paul Sonko earlier noted that the police are underpaid. The compensation is not sufficient for them, and this makes them hungry and thirsty, and of course it makes them take bribes. That is one of the assertion. And of course the other is that the technology that is used by the Uganda police force during investigation, some of it is apparently rudimentary. That is the word on the street. And of course when you look at it, for instance, if let's say you overspeed in some areas, no one is going to actually, we don't have like the cameras which will say, you know how, for instance, in the Western world, someone is driving and then they just find themselves with a ticket. If in a different area, because their systems are captured that maybe they were overspeeding and now you have a ticket to pay. Here, if a police officer doesn't give you the ticket, then you have no ticket to pay. And if you've been on Uganda,
they will actually ask you to weigh your options.
Exactly.
The ticket is 200k, but you can give the person 50k or 20k.
50,000 is even much. And if you are a motorist, you've seen this happening in this country. You've seen that there are many areas where you will be driving and you're stopped by a police officer, and it always wowed me how someone always puts a 10k on the side of, in case we find traffic police, okay?
They don't even look for change.
Thank you. And these are not just stories, these are not allegations, these are not sentiments from the staff of UBC. These are sentiments that are backed by reports and research into the police force, and it has been found that there is a high rate of corruption in there. Of course, we know that one of the departments that are highly corrupt is, of course, the traffic police. But now going back to the police where investigations are done, it is now being alleged that the CID is also the CID department is also highly corrupt, allegedly. But now coming back to us here, now that we know where the weaknesses are, What should be done going forward by the government to ensure that they root out all these corrupt officers?
The technology bit.
Yeah.
I'll start with the technology bit.
Yeah.
You see, there's a lot of transparency that happens if we use technology. How is this so? That at times you do realize if someone happens to go and report a case or file a case at police, and it's actually, the officer in charge at the CID does input all the records into the system, and then we know that for a record we have this particular gentleman who has been accused of this. Then at the end of the day, that particular file is already opened. And once it is opened, when you look at the servers of government systems, that can ideally, that particular name is actually saved somewhere. So that if we start off with investigations, and once court opens up to to bring into all these cases, we have a record of this particular person. We can have a manual file of the same, and then also create the other one on the online portals of the police. Why is this so? Because we've come to realize that even with the automation of most of government bodies, the reason as to why the automation comes up is that with technology, with the emergence of technology, the chances of you safeguarding information and records is quite easier. Because if someone in such circumstances is hiding a file, it will be very difficult to recover that file if it was just a written file, or let's say a photocopied file whereby someone can ideally just tear it apart or burn up the entire papers or the file itself. But with the technology, once you've backed it up with the system servers, however good someone is at, let's say, deleting the file at the center, police center, at least then at the main headquarters in police, they do have a copy
Actually,
of that.
I like what you're saying about technology and, you having a central system where in as much as someone can delete a file, it can still be found somewhere. URA has such a system where they keep track of people that are not remitting their taxes. Yes. And if URA can have this, and police is there to fight crime, I believe police can also have this.
Think about also.
Why don't we have it?
No, we do have it, by the way. We do have it, but it's not, it's not countrywide. When you go into, even in some of the police stations in the Kampala suburbs, they don't have this technology, so you will definitely find it at the headquarters alone.
But that's now beats the purpose. Chantal, yes?
It beats the purpose, yes, but it also raises a question. Why isn't it being deployed the way it's supposed to be deployed and utilized? Does that mean that it is intentionally, it's a question, an innocent question, by the way. Does that mean that it is intentionally left underutilized for the sake of letting certain things pass? Because hear me out, we have systems already deployed, for example, even in private entities. If I logged onto the company, logged into, say, if I walked into the company premises, my computer is logged in. If I delete anything off the system, it's easy to track who deleted at what time, using which login.
Yes, the user login.
Thank you.
Yes.
And that is not technology that we have to import into the country.
I mean, banks
and
have this technology
No.
where if you log into a system with my user, they will know Olive logged in, got access to this account.
Forgive the police here, because the cost of it, trust me, we do have quite a number of police stations across the country.
The cost of what?
The cost of employing this particular technology at all these particular police stations.
No.
We do.
Sonko, I want to disagree with you. Technology was put in place to make our lives a lot easier
but it's
than
costly.
they were.
But it's costly. I want us to believe that. It is costly.
Would you rather, Sonko, let me ask you,
Yes.
would you rather spend a huge amount of money once and ensure that you save a lot, because government is also made to lose money where there is corruption.
Yes.
So would you rather have lots of money, yes, it's expensive, but buy the technology, the equipment that is needed, Or would you rather cry about it and say it is expensive and each year keep complaining that your officers are corrupt?
No, I would rather
What
put
would
in
you
a lot
take?
of money and buy it and it's done and dusted.
So
why I'm actually looking at it
does the
from
government have the money to buy this equipment?
That is the question, and that is the reason as why I was saying,
Aside from
however
the
much we
software
are
needed.
pushing for it, you get to realize that it would cost. Maybe the government is looking at it as a huge
Expense
cost for
Aside-
now,
aside
and that's why we do
from-
not have it employed.
No, aside from the cost of the software and maybe any other parts of the system that can be purchased maybe as a one-off, what other expense are you talking about if it's not computers in these different
You know, I want to eliminate the
different
other
police stations?
intentionally part where Shinda was saying maybe she does not want to use it as the main word, but I want to believe it is an intention by the police
No, but she was
by the
still
police officials
finishing.
to ideally allow certain things to continue
Chantal, you
happening.
are saying apart from the software,
Apart from the software that needs to be purchased.
And the computers
And
as
the
well.
computers.
That is
How
the
do you
cost.
wake up in the morning and tell me it is costly to put a system in place, but every single year you are coming to the public and literally expressing and telling us how police is corrupt? This is what I usually say. You can't do a problem statement to us Ugandans who you're supposed to be giving solutions to and then just leave us like that. Do a problem statement and present solutions, put them in place. Listen, you cannot control Ugandans and stop them from being entirely from being corrupt. That one you cannot, but you have a body that you have trained. You have a body that you've put in place for a specific role, a body which is less in number compared to the population. How do you tell me that you cannot control that body, but then we Ugandans have to just sit and look? You cannot control, just like in a school, kids are raised different backgrounds, different homes, different upbringing. So you may not be able to control each and every child, how they behave.
but you must have a system in place that works.
The systems and the teachers that discipline, the way you train them, because they are a body, let me say, that is supposed to maintain the law and order. They're supposed to groom these children. You have the capacity to put them in order. Also, why do we continue to see people in these offices who go to disciplinary committee? Why do we still have them in the office?
Maybe the problem,
in these offices?
maybe the problem could be, do you think that probably the problem could be that instead of having what, let's say, the army has, the court martial, that where everyone, even I as a civilian, know that if an army officer is taken to the court martial,
yes,
it is done for them. Maybe it is because police doesn't have something like that, that we keep seeing the same thing happening all over and all over again.
Does it have to get to the level of a court martial? How many police officers have you seen being apprehended? How many, especially on the grounds of corruption? How many of them have you seen lose their office?
People losing their office, and however much you may actually seek for, putting an end to the same, but once the person who has actually been caught in the corruption act, what then happens at the end of it all? Because one may ideally say we need integrity checks within the entire police department.
How we would do that beats me, just like that lifestyle audit by the IJJ still beats me. But we have some comments coming through, and this one says, good morning, Olive and colleagues. Police institution is on top when it comes to corruption in Uganda. I think cabinet and parliament have to prioritize bettering the living standards of these officers in uniform. The salaries these officers in uniform get cannot make them sustain their family needs. This makes them very vulnerable to bribery. The corruption in this entity also presents a very huge ramifications on the justice system in our country, because the process starts with them before reaching courts of law. In most cases, the poor members of public can't afford justice easily. This is from Orech Ambrose from the John District Youth Councillor Amolata. And of course, Ben from Kasese says they are just corrupt because the salary they are getting is not satisfying them. And of course, retired Captain Chitaka Mayanja in Chiboga says, unless courts have powers to convict police officers who hide case files and those who misappropriate evidence, police will still rot and rot. And of course, Hangino Levy Job, streaming live in Butaleja, says the government should increase on their salaries to reduce the violations. And Hatchman in Vura Marua says, so smart, Sonko. And he says, based on the following challenges, police is ranked as it is stated: financial constraints due to limited budgetary allocations, civil disorders, as well as management downtime. I think he says that there is also an issue with the management. Well, that's all that we have got for you, and this conversation cannot continue any further, at least not on right now, but we can have it online. We can continue to have this conversation on our X app, so please keep your opinions coming through. I'm Olive Monica Najma.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
MTN Momo Pay is the easy way to pay. Dial *165*3# or use the MTN Momo app. You don't need cash. MTN Momo Pay is safe and free.
The cardinal role of a government is maintaining law and order, safeguarding citizens' rights, and providing essential public goods and services. Throughout its tenure, the government has consistently upheld these principles. This foundation creates an environment conducive to delivering crucial social services to citizens through diverse approaches such as taxation, strategic budgeting, and effective policy implementation. A transformative education system, advancing healthcare provisions, enhancing social welfare, and propelling infrastructure growth, all of which continue to evolve daily to cater to the population's expectations. Supported by a meticulously organized network of ministries, government remains committed to serving its citizens. Coming soon on your public broadcaster, The Front Bench, your interface with the government every Monday at 8:30 p.m. with Joram Paul Sonko, only on your public broadcaster, UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Good morning, Uganda. My name is Irene Alena Misang, and welcome to the GMU Tourism Express. We are definitely your ultimate guide about everything that concerns Uganda's tourism and East Africa, that is Kenya, Tanzania, and Rwanda. It's a fresh new week, and we are getting closer to the end of the year. It's that time of the year when we start ticking some destinations off our bucket list. You know, you'd be like, okay, yeah, I visited Jinja, I went Fort Portal, I went to, and okay, some of you even don't have this travel bucket list. When a year is starting, you don't have anything like travel in New Year resolutions. But why? Why? You have to, at least when a year is starting, have a travel resolution, like be like, okay, this is my bucket list. These are the places I'm going to visit in maybe the first quarter of the year, or go here around Easter time. This is the place I'll visit. But why? Like, this is Uganda, this is your country, and it is ours to explore. So for me, I'm already ticking off, okay, There are some 2 destinations that I've not visited this year, and I really wanted to go there this year. But, okay, perhaps next year, you know, we only have a few days to end the year, and then, okay, I'm pushing this to the next year. But at least I have like 7 destinations that I've ticked off my bucket list. You can also take on this challenge and be like, okay, these are the places I'm visiting come 2024. And you also explore your country, like it is just to explore. Well, in the travel news today, we have last week, UWEC, Uganda Wildlife Conservation and Education Center, hosted about 100 magistrates and honorable judges from the East African Magistrates and Judges Association. This is a members association for different judges and magistrates in East Africa, that is Kenya, Uganda and East Africa, Kenya and Tanzania. And this marked the end of their annual conference that was held in Uganda. This is important to see that different professionals, diverse professionals, are recognizing the tourism influence. If you get different industries coming together, visiting different destinations for wildlife and recreation, you find that it broadens the tourism industry, and it also shows that the industrial collaboration, having maybe people, doctors visiting different destinations, having now like the judges, we had them at UWEC, having media personalities, it shows the industrial collaborations, and it signifies that there is a lot in travel and tourism that has to be taken on. We are going to explore the Western region today. And you know, when you talk about the Western region, I think almost everyone who has traveled around Uganda, that is the place they know. When you say, when you talk about tourism in Uganda, they are going to say the Western region. I went to Kasese, I went to Fort Portal, I went to Chisoro. But today there is something very unique that most of you have been skipping, and you've not been giving it attention. But today, that is the place we are going to explore, and the place is in Bunyaruguru volcanic region. You know that region has so many crater lakes, and the most common ones, we talk about the Twin Lakes. But today we are going to explore this unique lake, Lake Nkugute. Lake Nkugute is also known as Lake Rutoto. It is found in Rutoto village in Rubirizi district. And this lake is unique because most of you know it because it has the African shape. When you look at the green lush around it, the banana plantations, the mahogany forest, you see that they all form the African map, and that is the most unique thing about it. But away from that, this lake has different stories behind it, and when you listen to the locals around the place telling you the amazing stories about it, you'll be mesmerized by them. And some of the stories that are common when you go to this place, Lake Nkugute, first the name Nkugute means swallow. So to the locals, they say that this lake used to swallow a boy and a girl every year. It was a way it was sacrificing to itself. And somehow maybe people used to go there to wash clothes from the lake. And somehow these people got, maybe they took off eyes their kids, and by the time they could look out for the kid, they could just see a boy maybe just drowning in the lake. And then even if someone tried to save them, they could also just be drowned in the lake. And to them, they say this happened yearly. So every year the lake could swallow one boy and one girl. Also other people were swallowed, but of course to them that is the story that they have. That is why it is called Lake Nkugute. And then also another story behind this is, they also say that beyond 10 p.m. in this place, when you walk around the lake, you're going to find the Bachwezi. The Bachwezi are demigods, and to them they say that when you walk alone around this place, you find a very tall, strange man with cattle. They're usually rearing their cattle, and you meet them, they beat you off because they be accusing you of stealing their cattle. So at Lake Nkugute, you don't walk around that place beyond 10 p.m. Also this place, the locals around this place, they so much depend on agriculture, and you see the banana plantations around it. The place has some of the most fertile soils in Uganda. When we talk about birding, like last year we had the birding conference in Uganda. This place has various bird species, and so many birders are taking on this place to go and just settle there to see the different bird species that reside around this lake. And okay, when I say about this lake, there are so many stories. My friend went there. The first time I passed that place, it was filled by fog. And this is the time that I saw fog just in front of me. I could nearly just touch it. I didn't see it very well, but when I came back and the sun had cleared, the place was amazing. And this place, you can only believe it after seeing it. So when you get time, just go explore this place. Go visit Lake Nkogute, see, meet up with the locals, have the canoe experiences on those small boats. Anyway, today's travel tip, what we have for you today as the travel tip, as exploring Uganda, as you're having any tip, as you're having any trip around East Africa or across East Africa. This is the travel tip we have for you. Always and always carry a deodorant and a spray as you travel. Like man, after a strenuous hike maybe to mountain Kadam, you come back and your friends don't want to get close to you. But if you have a spray or a deodorant around you, it makes it easier for you to still connect with your friends. That was it for today for the GM Tourism Express. And next is the the business update from Joram Paul Sonko. Catch us every Monday to Thursday. Thank you so much.
All right, good morning and many thanks for sticking around to Good Morning Uganda this Monday morning, the 11th of December 2023. We're only left with a few days now to say goodbye to this particular year, and then as we usher ourselves into 2024 with lots of hopes, aspirations and great energy, I should say. I'm Joram Paul Songo. It is time for the GMU business updates of the morning. As you attack your Monday, you can as well have some information about what is trending across the world of business, with which we're going to start with international trade this time round, as e-commerce and technology has been highlighted as a great boost to SMEs that are underrepresented in international trade. When we look at most of the small and medium-sized enterprises within the African continent, most of them are underrepresented as much as simply because they do not have the different networks that will help them tap into some of the virgin territories from the business clusters. Now, the new digital technologies could help the smaller companies sell across borders, as well as support female and African entrepreneurs, according to trade experts on how e-commerce discussion on the e-commerce discussion panel. Now, this was held in Geneva last week at the UN Conference on Trade and Development, and of course the panel was having a theme, unlocking potential, as addressing inclusivity barriers in e-commerce trade to deliver sustainable impact in communities everywhere. So it also highlighted the role that the public-private partnerships can as well play in supporting economic growth, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises. And as much as we preach for the same, you get to realize that even here in Uganda, tapping into the internet or tapping into e-commerce as well as e-technology would ideally give a very huge opportunity for SMEs to tap into the various international markets, because if you want to expand your business, then there is no simpler way to do it unless you do have presence on the internet, because when you're doing it the manual way, you will have to expand by setting up various branches. But for the businesses that are operating via the online platforms, it is very easy. With simply one branch here in Uganda, you can still open up various branches or various portals for yourself that could ideally open up opportunities from world over, whereby anyone from any country can easily access your products or can easily know about your company. Before you set up physical locations in various countries or different regions, it is always better to have your particular space on the internet where people world over can recognize the services and the businesses you have to offer. Now, when you look at E-Commerce Trade Commission, this delivered by the E-Commerce Trade Commission, the event did present the emphasis of collaboration from groups with a diverse range of interests, such as private platforms that are interested in creating room for various businesses to grow. Some of the platforms that actually took part into this include Shopify, the third sector input from the Institute of Export and International Trade. All of these were centered around creating awareness for how small and medium-sized enterprises world over can easily tap into the opportunities that are available on the internet space. So e-commerce and technology will ideally be something that all of the businesses world over can consider if they want to expand out of their country's reach. All right, now let's talk electronic mobility. That is from the Ugandan perspective now, as Kira Motors is witnessing a surge in orders for both diesel and electric buses. This development marks a major shift in the company's strategy and highlights the country's growing appetite for sustainable transportation solutions. Now, besides that, Kira Motors entered the electric vehicle market with its Kayola EV bus a few years ago, and since then the company has grown exponentially. Their innovative electric bus model boasts a range of up to 350 kilometers on a single charge, making it an ideal for urban transportation. Not only that, when you look at the manufacturing plant in Nakasongola, the Kira Motors production hub in Nakasongola is buzzing with lots of activity to clearly show that there is room for manufacturing lots and lots of vehicles. The team is working around the clock to fulfill 28 bus orders comprising of a mix of electric and diesel. Now, this production hub will soon be completed by the soon-to-be launched plant that is also in Jinja the other way. Now, in the body shop, there are skilled workers assembling bus frames, focusing on precision and balance. So when you look at Uganda's rise to manufacturing its own vehicles, then we are taking the right route, and you'll definitely in the next few years be able to see this particular Kira Motors offering vast opportunities with international car manufacturers like the likes of Toyota, the Volkswagens, the Mercedes and the like. So well, we'll definitely continue to say well in to Kira Motors and everyone that is attached to the same. But well, as we're summing up with the GME Business Update this morning, let's have a look at the Forex market to see how it did close by Friday. As you're definitely heading into the Forex market this morning, you realize that the US dollar did close its buying at 3,758.33, while selling was at 3,766.33. And then the Great Britain pound was buying at 4,611.27, while selling at 4,623.54. The euro was buying at 4,014.01, while selling at 4,024.70. Then the Kenyan shilling was buying at 24.31 while selling at 24.87. The Tanzanian shilling was buying at 1.30 while selling at 1.30 as well. The South African rand was buying at 204.26 rather, while selling at 204.80 for all of you who are heading into the Forex market as early as Monday morning. It is the festive season out there, and for the businesses within the Kampala CBD have already turned into a Christmas kind of welcoming business. When you look at the kind of goods that are on display, talk about clothes, talk about shoes, and then also talk about Christmas, attires, I should say, and Christmas commodities are all over display when you go downtown in Kampala. So that clearly shows you it is room for the festive season. Not only that, but you'll ideally also be able to notice that Christmas carols are being played everywhere, countrywide. Radio stations, television stations, and as well as most of the dealers in most of these particular, entertainment places. But well, that is it for our GMU business this morning. Till tomorrow, we'll be back to give you more from the business world. I'm Jerome Paul Sonko. Coming up shortly is the traffic updates with Olive Monica Najuma.
Thank you so much for keeping with us here on Good Morning Uganda. I'm Olive Monica Nejuma here to take you through your route this morning as I give you traffic updates. Now, if you are coming from the areas of Namgongo, heading to Chaliwajala, and of course going through Nalia, Ntinda, this is the route we will be looking at this morning to see if you are in good hands or if you might have to consider using alternative routes. Now, what you're seeing on your screen is the Namugongo Road as you're headed to Chaliwajala. And for this part here, we are seeing green zones which are indicative of a smooth flow of traffic as you head to the areas of Nalia and of course Chaliwajala Trading Center. But not so fast, because as we can see, the red zones have now started still on Nalia, Namgongo Road, and of course they go up ahead until you reach that junction where that joins you to Namgongo Road and of course to Nalia Road, and it shows the traffic that is coming through from Nalia Namgongo Road. And yes, we have some orange zones there that are indicative of traffic that is starting to build up as for the people that are coming in from Namgongo Road. These orange zones are usually, when you're in traffic, you're not stagnant in one area, you are moving but not at a fast pace, because if we still follow the Namgongo Road route, we can see that there is still intense traffic coming through from the areas of Namugongo heading to the areas of Nalia. Now, as you can see on your screen, we are in the area of Nalia, which is around, now we see that there is traffic around Children's Clinic Nalia, and as you go ahead to the areas of the bypass, you still see that there is a traffic jam over here. But the good news is it lets up and you have green zones that indicate that there is smooth flow of traffic over there. But still continuing, now we are headed to the roundabout in Nalia, and as you can see around the northern bypass, there is traffic, a little bit of traffic jam at the roundabout. And of course when you look at the northern bypass itself this morning, it looks pretty clean, meaning there is a smooth flow of traffic over there. A little bit of red zones around the roundabout, but that is to be expected. Now moving ahead, still in Nalia area, there is smooth flow of traffic over there. Now as we look at Majora Road, there is a little bit of traffic that is building up on the area of Majora Road, but coming back to Chwatle Road, where Majora Road and Nalia Road and Chwatle Road meet, there is smooth flow of traffic. Now we experience a little bit of an orange zone around the area where Mbogo Road 1 meets Chwatle Road. There is a bit of an orange zone, and now I see red zones that have built up here, and of course it shows that it goes on up to when you reach that section that has Chigowa Road. But the good news is that Chigowa Road is looking pretty green this morning, indicating that there is smooth flow of traffic. And even the traffic at Chwatule Road is not that intense. It is in that valley that has Eliana Hotel, but after that you should be able to move smoothly. Now as we take a look at Old Chira Road, we see that there are green zones all across. No sign of an orange or even red zone, which means that for those on the road or about to hit the road as of this morning, things are looking pretty clean for you, because even as we look at Chigobe Road, there is still smooth flow of traffic. Now looking at Ntinda Chisas Road, there is a bit of traffic coming in from Ntinda Chisas Road, obviously, and here it is mainly at the traffic lights within Ntinda, so that should not really worry you, because when I look at the surrounding areas and the feeder roads like Kalema Road that are feeding into this main road, I don't see much to worry about. And of course, continuing ahead, you're going to experience a little bit of traffic ahead, but as you continue ahead and you look at roads like Semawata Road, there is smooth flow of traffic there. And of course, we still go ahead with Ntinda Road. Now Ntinda Road is starting to have some bit of traffic. I see traffic coming through from Ntinda 2 Road feeding into the main road here in Bukoto. And of course, taking a look at Ntinda 2 Road itself, I see a huge red zone over there for some bit of time, but then it lets up and the road, this section becomes green. Now going back to the main road in Ntinda, I see green zones over there, as you can see on your screen, and they continue, indicating that the traffic flow is quite smooth this morning if you're just planning to hit the road, or if you're already on the road and you're just streaming live on your phone as you are heading into town. And of course, still continuing with the Ntinda Road, we see that there is a smooth flow of traffic still in this area. So most of the zones we are looking at this morning indicate that there is smooth flow of traffic on our roads this morning. I don't know what miracle that is, but it is a good thing. It is good news when there is smooth flow of traffic. We're looking at where Ntinda Road joins Nakawa at Ginger Road, and of course there is still smooth flow of traffic over there. So overall, we are looking good this morning. You should be able to go to wherever you're going, at least if you're coming from the areas of Ntinda, Chaliwajara, Chira, Chwatule, Chisasi. If you are using Ntinda, the Ntinda route this morning, everything looks very smooth. There doesn't seem to be a lot that will hold you back or keep you on the road for so long. And that is good news for people that are moving in the morning, going to their workplaces, businesses, and also traveling to different parts of the world, of the country. The last thing you need when you are traveling is an intense traffic jam. So I wish you a beautiful day. I'm hoping that you make good traffic choices when you are on the road. We are in a very sensitive period of the year where there is intense, normally around this period of the year, traffic crimes are at their highest, and of course we normally have intense road carnage. So don't be a statistic and don't contribute to the statistics. This is still Good Morning Uganda.
Of the day on UBC. was brought to you by
MTN Momo Pay is the easy way to pay. Dial *165*3# or use the MTN Momo app. You don't need cash. MTN Momo Pay is safe and free.
The cardinal role of a government is maintaining law and order, safeguarding citizens' rights and providing essential public goods and services. Throughout its tenure, the government has consistently upheld these principles. This foundation creates an environment conducive to delivering crucial social services to citizens through diverse approaches such as taxation, strategic budgeting, and effective policy implementation. A transformative education system, advancing healthcare provisions, enhancing social welfare, and propelling infrastructure growth, all of which continue to evolve daily to cater to the population's expectations. Supported by a meticulously organized network of ministries, government remains committed to serving its citizens. Coming soon on your public broadcaster, The Front Bench, your interface with the government every Monday at 8:30 p.m. with Joram Paul Sonko, only on your public broadcaster, UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Juko. Yo. Wachiko. Check the shopping, man. What's your secret?
Uganda, haven't you heard of the Parish development model PDM?
Yes, I did, but I thought it was just a talk.
No, Sebatia. It is real. I and a few friends together formed a circle, accessed money from the PDM, invested in a poultry project, and now things are moving.
Juko. I thought I was one of your friends.
You are.
But you left me behind.
I didn't leave you in poverty. What you do, just visit your LC2 chairperson and your parish chief and start the process of economic transformation. Just like that. The Parish development model is an initiative from the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Local Government designed to transform all lives of Ugandans for the better.
PDM, my parish, my development, my life.
Greetings to you in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. My name is the Reverend Captain Jackson Asiku, by the grace of God, serving as the Vicar, St. Paul's Church of Uganda, Okuvu, and I would like to wish you a Merry Christmas. Christmas is the time that we remember and celebrate the birth of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, whom Isaiah describes as the Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and the Prince of Peace. No wonder later Jesus calls himself and he says, "My peace I give to you, and my peace I live with you. Not as the world gives, do not let your heart be troubled." And that's the same message I would like to bring to you, that as you celebrate this season, please celebrate the season and endeavor to keep peace, be united, endeavor to meet with your family. Celebrate this day in righteousness and in holiness, not as the world does in debauchery. Therefore, for those that are traveling up country, I would like to wish you a safe journey, mercies, and also may the Lord provide for you. Once again, from me, I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. God bless you.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda.
A very good morning and many thanks for sticking around to Good Morning Uganda this fruitful Monday. I'm Joram Paul Sonko, and there's a lot of excitement in studio this morning, pretty much because I'm happy. But besides that, I'm joined by Robert Chirabo Nyonyi Ntono. This morning we're going to be discussing a very critical issue, that is the COP28. that is coming to an end tomorrow in Dubai. This particular one has actually sparked public, debates regarding lots of issues. One, climate change. Two, Uganda's delegates to the UAE this time around, the number itself. Then three, how impactful is it and what does it mean to the Ugandans here in the country and those away from the country? Well, Robert, good morning again.
A lovely morning to you, Sonko.
Mine is a very lovely one, I should
I
say.
can just see it on your face. You're all excited, you're all happy.
There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of
I don't know if it's December or it is just maybe you've been able. I remember you said your resolutions was that you don't complete this year a single man. So I don't know if
no, chances are
you've made a breakthrough in that area.
I'll make the breakthrough next year. The chances are. But besides that, Robert, let's look at COP28 here. The bigger conversation across the country, social media, even in the news. COP28. What is the relevance of COP28, first of all, when you look at it as a channel through which discussions to address climate change have been, put into discussion?
Well, when you look at the various conference of parties that we've had now, this is the biggest, I must say, conference where we see over 200 countries come together with one issue, discussing climate change, the impact of climate change, and how best we can have a better future. Because climate change is real. We've seen a lot of challenges. Talk about Uganda today when we look at the impact of floods. Many years ago, we used about 4 decades. What we are seeing today, we used not to have it. But you must understand that this is global. We've had so much global warming than ever in the history of planet Earth. We've had so many catastrophes as a result of climate change. Now, when we see COP, which is Conference of Parties, these countries all gather, key stakeholders gather. Now this year they're in Dubai. They gather, and what is on the agenda is how best. For example, this year they are looking at how to fast track clean energy, the transition into clean energy. This has also been a talk. We've seen so many countries where they're setting deadlines that these fossil fuels, we should be phasing them away. That where we're having cars that release a lot of carbon dioxide in the environment, now we are moving into electronic cars. We are moving into solar energy. We are moving into liquid gas for cooking. That is the direction. But how best do we get there? And also we must understand that most of the countries that emit so much in the environment may not suffer the same as poor nations. So what methods do we put in place to ensure that these other countries that maybe have not attained certain levels of technological development and have these huge emissions can in one way or the other find a way to cover up? For example, many Ugandans could have heard of carbon trade. So how do we have these countries that have huge land, maybe grow more trees, and they can get paid for that, so that it can be able to absorb the carbon dioxide that is in the environment? So it is the biggest conference of parties that happens and attracts a number of countries, not on global peace, not on what, but with the aim of discussing issues of climate change, how we can adopt, how we can help each other, because we've come to discover that climate change, no country can handle it independently.
True.
Because what is done in Uganda has an impact to Rwanda. What is done in Rwanda could have an impact. So if Uganda goes maybe in oil exploration, anyhow, of course these gases are going to affect even our neighborhood. So that is why they agreed that country, region, continents, we meet, discuss and forge our way forward.
Well, And also, you get to realize that the COP28 does provide an opportunity to identify global solutions for limiting the global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees as well. But Robert, when you look at the fact that we were represented as a country, not only us, the other East African community countries and the other African countries, the question would be, what are we pushing for? That is from the Ugandan side, and then looking at the region and the continent entirely. What are we really pushing for with this particular COP28?
Now, first and foremost, when you look at such gatherings, you can't push as a single country. You either push as a bloc. And before COP, we had the Africa Summit. That is, countries in Africa met. And they presented forward an agenda that as we go to this COP as African countries, this is what we want to focus on. One of them, which was key, was the Loss and Damage Fund. You see, there is so much funding for climate change. But the issue is, how do these monies get to the targeted person? Many of them have not been used very well. Some countries have not even been able to access. A fund is there, money is there, but then you can't access the fund. So African countries this time are saying the Loss and Damage Fund is what we want to get money for. African countries speaking as Africa, not as Uganda, because we put in what we want as Uganda, as East Africa, then the other bloc, to have a bigger bargaining power when you get to that. So they are saying we need to access these funds. All funds that you've put in place to look at adaptation, to look at how better we can adjust. Africa this time wants to be able to get these monies, wants its people to benefit from them. The carbon talk has been there for so long, you know. Africa has a very good vast land. How do you ensure that this does not just remain a myth? How does this time Africa get this money? Africans plant these trees, reap these dollars, you know. So we are going into that, but also looking at better avenues of how these other developed countries can also mitigate or reduce on what they are sending into the environment. Because by and large, much as Africa is also developing, our emissions are not as much as the other developed world. So how do we ensure that also they respect the various commitments
that are being made?
Yeah, because at every COP, there are commitments. What are we doing to reduce temperatures to this percent? So it is a check time. What have you done since the previous COP to ensure that you're really moving through this direction? What is failing you? You know, us who are coming up with this, what are we also doing? So basically, it is seeing for Africa this time on their agenda is they want to tap into all these funds, but they also want their counterparts to show commitment to the previous agreements that they have come across. Because believe you me, if we do not do something, climate change, we shall reach a point when we don't have, for example, with global warming. We saw what was happening in Australia and other countries where people are dying because of heat.
True.
Now, there is no amount of money
and there's been a
that you're going to inject into that. If Africa, if Asia, they're having the same problem. So it therefore calls for action to avert such.
Okay, and when you speak of action to avert the same, you got to realize that some of the key commitments includes focusing on clean energy. And speaking of clean energy, as one of the ways we're going to address climate change and how to deal with it, what is the future like for clean energy, especially clean energy use on the African continent?
Well, the African continent still has a very big challenge. And here I'll be scratching my own eye, talk about Uganda.
Yes.
But the good thing is that there have also been various advancements in the world of technology. For example, many African countries, their source of cooking is firewood. And this is not clean energy. Many African countries, when you drive through their cities,
it is cutting down trees.
You find that the cars they are driving. Many African countries in the era of industrialization, many of them have outdated technology. It is open frames, you know? So it's a big challenge. Many times I've spoken to people from UNOC, I've spoken to people in the oil and gas sector, looking at our oil sector as a country. We are just going into exploration. But one thing you find that Uganda has taken stringent measures, used appropriate technology. For example, we're going to have what they call open exploration, where you go to an area and you see flames and gases all over because there is oil. Ours, we have a technology where we will not even be able to see all those fires, where it is contained to protect the environment. But the biggest challenge remains on in-house usage. In Uganda and many other developing countries, African countries, it's where even you find someone in an apartment, but they're using a charcoal stove to cook. I don't know how many homes outside Kampala have gas. It's quite expensive, and this is not only for Uganda's case. Yes, I've seen government of Uganda trying to find ways of reducing usage of charcoal, but what alternatives are we having, you know? Because deforestation, you're talking about clean energy, but if you're still cutting trees at the rate of which you're cutting them, and we are not using these for just furniture, we are using this to burn. Go to many areas where they're having brick making. There are furnaces of how they, you know, so there is clean energy is still a very big challenge
for us
as African countries. And worst being that a number of African countries are now moving into oil exploration. They're discovering oil. And if they don't use appropriate technology, then this is going to be a reverse gear. If they don't look at the best ways, for example, if they don't have refineries, these other byproducts, how they're handled, of oil, you know?
Yes.
So that is still a big challenge. And when I look at this year's main aim, which aims at fast-tracking the transition to clean energy, it is really very, very important. But what steps are we putting in place? That is why when we talk about these various forms of funding, just imagine if carbon trade became real. You know you have you plant your acres of trees, you don't cut these trees, but you're reaping money from them.
We've seen a few people actually who have the money in Uganda who are doing the planting of trees lately for the money as well. But also when you look at the fact that, like Chira has actually put it, it is a long journey that we've already started off when it comes to clean energy or the future of clean energy usage in Africa. When you look at the other countries that are taking part in the COP28 this year in the UAE, most of these countries have already, upheld the use of clean energy. And they are using it so effectively well because they also do have the finances and the technology up there is already, up to speed with the current trends. When you look at Africa, it is majorly centered in the urban centers and more so for those who have the money and capacity to ideally, let's say, use, for example, gas cookers. And most of the homes in Uganda especially, most of them use charcoal.
Because you can't risk electricity.
Yeah, electricity.
If you're to use
it's costly, first of all.
Yes.
And then you also look at the dangers that come to the usage of electricity. So when we are talking about this entire thing, I think it is the same reason as to why the financing comes in, the finances. One of the bigger reasons as to why most of the African countries do take part in the COP is simply because they are also going to pitch for some finances. Now that brings me to the element of climate financing. As the entire emphasis of commitments with the previous COPs, we've seen most of these developed countries pledging billions of money in COP and also in a pool to ensure that they will help the developed countries. But it does seem like we are still waiting for the same money.
Now the biggest challenge has been I think there's been so much excitement Okay. You know, the fact that you're having climate change and all these issues of global warming, the floods, it has piqued interest. Now, various analysts, every after COP, come up and you see them criticizing that whatever they intended to achieve, they're either moving too slow towards it, or not even honoring the commitments. When you talk about global temperatures, these countries commit themselves that by this year we must have attained these levels. But when you look at their levels of investment or the speed at which they are phasing out key pollutants does not match with the commitment. When we look at the fund, when they commit themselves to these billions of dollars, how it comes in is a challenge. When it is there, the terms and conditions to access it is also another big challenge. So there is so much zeal to get to where we want to, but the speed and the level of fulfilling our commitments remain a challenge at COP. That is the biggest, is how do these great nations, because not so much can Africa do without the fund. Yet, Africa as a continent has so much potential in absorbing the problems created by developed countries in the realm of climate change. It is still not that so much polluted. It still have, when you look at the percentage of Africa, the plant cover green. So there's so much potential. But then these other developed countries must appreciate that the way to go is helping Africa in some of these areas. No wonder, even when we go to these very big platforms, the level of bargaining sometimes is a challenge. Because there is these continental imbalances. Much as we have this that we are all equal when we meet, these all parties hold, but still these remain.
Because we have
one is asking.
And you're asking from the first world countries here.
Provide. You do so much harm, provide, and we see how we can reduce the harm. But there are also terms. Because you know Africa with funds, there are also terms to which we can access. That is why this time Africa is saying the loss and damage fund has been there. We made a success. But we are not accessing it. Can we be able to access more of this money? Because unless we do that, then we may go slow. For example, today, if you look at Uganda's problems, I was watching an interview with our Right Honorable Prime Minister on, I think it was BBC, where she was being interviewed. And she said, for example, Uganda have a problem of floods, people settling in swamps. Now,
Quite
if you tell,
many, by the way.
Quite many. Now, if you tell a country like Uganda, what could be the solution? Yes, you have the laws in place, the regulations.
We even have NEMA.
We even have NEMA. But by and large, the solution maybe would be to resettle these people. Like what is being done in Uganda. You know, the other side. That now government, with the help of a certain non-government organization, is going to give 10 million shillings to these about 400 families
to resettle somewhere.
So this NGO is giving about 7 million per family, and government is going to add 10. So you're given this money to leave that particular area. But before government has begun, there is an international body. So the solution, when we talk about resettlement, maybe government may not be having sufficient funds to do that. But if we have a particular fund that we can tap into that, these are some of the challenges. That's why the Prime Minister was very clear that we need to resettle these people. But we do not have the capacity
to resettle them. But you know, again, it also calls upon us as Ugandans to avoid, you know, putting ourselves in positions like this, getting to buy, you know, land in these wetlands per se, and it has actually become a common trait by most of the Ugandans. I don't know whether it's the cheaper option or is it because it is close to the city. But mentioning about the idea that that is an issue. I think she was right and spot on with the fact that most of the Ugandans are settling in there. But now, speaking of the Prime Minister, Robert, 600 delegates from Uganda were sent to COP28. That alone created a very huge, critical debate from the public as to why we had all that representation in the UAE. There are reasons as to why we did have them, obviously. But when you look at the fact that we have all of those delegates, and beside the 600, we also have others who went through NGOs and civil society organizations, but those went independently. Now, when you look at the delegates we sent to Uganda, that does look like the largest we've sent to an edition of COP. Does the representation match our expectations, or the number was overboard?
Well, first, we know Dubai is a land of opportunities. And for this particular COP, it's the first that Uganda has got its store and office.
Okay.
These were given to us. These were given to us.
We've had good relations with
with the UAE. So they chose to give us a store where we're going to be exhibiting. We have an office where we're going to be meeting various, because COP matches, it's all about environment, but even other countries sends other people. You will find that the Uganda Investment Authority maybe is represented, the likes of Roderick Rabogo, Presidential Investment, whatever, is also represented. Then people are going to be exhibiting, you see, to show what Uganda has. But also, when the various sessions are going on, you find that these interactions also matter so much. So usually now Uganda wants to have like a one-stop center, that when you go to these conferences, we have everybody that you need should you want to invest in Uganda. If it's all about investment, well, it has been represented. So the basic is to take advantage of every opportunity that is at COP. Yes, there could be some, could be avoidables. That is no doubt about it. There could be some, could be avoidables. Okay. But we wanted to look at all key government bodies in this area being well represented, so that we can tap into all these opportunities. Sometimes we've questioned the expense. I remember one time we had a UNA delegation, that is the Uganda, North America, something. And people were questioned, but over a time, the trickle-down effect of how much these were bringing into the country, the aid they were able to attract and all this, at the end of the day means so much. However, not saying that there could have been excesses in terms of some that could have gone, and maybe may not have been of very much virtue. But most important is that key people were there, and we hope for the best.
All right, and at this moment, we're going to be joined by the ED, that is at the National Environmental Management Authority, NEMA, Dr. Barirega Akankwasa, to give us more details regarding the SEM. And that is obviously with this particular conversation that we're having this morning, rotating around COP28 in Dubai. And he's going to be joining us via Zoom as we continue our conversations. A very good morning, sir, and many thanks for joining us. Of course, and as we linking up with the ED of NEMA, Robert, I do have some comments here coming in from some of the viewers. One is saying, Cherabo, it's good for the entire world to understand this issue of COP28. He says that me and a few others in Uganda, how many in Uganda who are following it and know its outcomes? So he says that the government needs to continue with the public sensitization about the SEM, because it seems very few people have an idea about COP28. And that is why I want to ask, by the way, how relevant is this to the ordinary Ugandans?
One, when governments go, when Uganda, East Africa, and Africa, why am I using Uganda, East Africa, and Africa? Because at these big gatherings, you can't go as an individual and gain at such a level. So you have a joint communique and all that. So when we talk about, for example, the loss and damage fund, this is money, if accessible, that Uganda is going to use to help the ordinary Ugandan who is suffering on the effects of climate change. Many opportunities that we find there, I'm looking at funding first and foremost, many opportunities that we find that government accesses, if the ordinary Ugandan, this money trickles down to them, it is going to help greatly. If we wake up one day and we have had successful carbon trade deals, and they do happen here, the commitments actually, you know, climate change is very funny. When we talk about high temperatures that the world is meeting to see how best they can reduce these temperatures, an ordinary Ugandan is benefiting. When we talk about reducing carbon emissions, you know, I remember the survey that I was reading around, looking at Kampala as one of the dirtiest cities, I mean, in terms of pollution. And they were showing how respiratory diseases are on an increase because of these excessive pollutions. So if this scope finds ways to reduce these emissions, you're having better health as a country, because sometimes issues to do with climate change may not have a direct benefit for everybody, but they look at a universal approach. If you are having ways of reducing floods, you know, it may not come to you directly at Sonko's home, but if we tame this, then you have better roads to move through and all that. So the ordinary Ugandan benefits in terms we get breakthroughs in this climate funding, but also benefits in terms of having a cleaner environment. Benefits when we go to clean energy. When we make these commitments, and now government, I think you've seen government's plan of reducing or subsidizing on gas. I don't know if you've come across that have government of Uganda, you know, and there is a scheme through which people are able to get these. These are all international commitments, and then the funds are available. So the ordinary Ugandan gets, but also the more we have awareness on climate change, if we have more funds on communication, you know, when people get to know how best to adopt, how best to prevent, then still this benefits the ordinary Ugandan.
Well, I think that comment was coming in from retired Captain Chitaka Mayanja in Chibogo, who was saying Bintu will be unless the government
and that one, and Chitaka is a farmer, so for him, retired Captain Chitaka Mayanja in Chiboga, for you a farmer, there is so much you stand to benefit in terms of clean energy. If we have more funds, maybe they're helping people biogas, for example, for those in the farming sector, this dung and water, and there are funds that you can tap from and have biogas. You use biogas at your home. So there is so much, though not directly, but with financing, that is direct, but also the fact that we are protecting and saving the environment, Mother Nature, you benefit.
And there's an interesting comment also coming in from Mugisha Imanzi from Muyenga, who says, can we discuss climate financing also from the global north? Because it does seem like they are the greatest emitters of carbon emissions.
Well, the global north is a bit tricky. Reason being, even when we are to look at international relations, you may find somehow that it is a bit isolated in one way or the other. When you look at, because this conference of parties, one, it's more voluntary. Though the decisions may be bounding to all, but there is no penalties for enforcement. We can only talk, and activists push, but we've not seen serious penalties. That if the global north, so it is more of saying goodwill, you know, we agreed, but we can't enforce so far.
Oh, wow. And currently, as we speak, we are now joined by Dr. Barirenga Akankwasa, who is the Executive Director, NEMA, as we are continuously growing with our conversation here this morning. A very good morning, sir, and many thanks for joining us.
A very good morning to you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, and very loud and clear.
Excellent. A very good morning, and thanks for the discussion.
Well in, and thank you very much for joining us once again. My question that will definitely be going to you first is, looking at COP28, what is Uganda's interests, if we are to start with that? Uganda's interest, East Africa's interests, and Africa's interest in COP28?
Yes, thank you very much for the show. Uganda's interest, as is the interest of Africa and East Africa, and indeed the developing world, is that the developed world, who are responsible for the biggest part of historical and present emissions, take up responsibility for these emissions so that they can fund the least developing countries and developing economies to adapt to the shocks of climate impacts caused by these historic and present emissions. That's one. Two, our interest as developing countries is that there must be transfer of capacity, transfer of technology to be able to adapt to climate change. And three, much as everyone is polluting, the level of pollution is different in terms of scope and the quantities of emissions, and so we must espouse the principle of collective but differentiated responsibility, meaning that those who are polluting more should stop pollution as the first step so that the world can be saved from the plunge of going beyond the 1.5 degrees target, which the world is well off track to achieve, and we can already see climate extremes across the globe. And so if these polluters do not stop pollution now, if the coal stations are still powered on and they are not being powered off, then we are likely to plunge the planet into a crisis that we may not be able to achieve. So our interest is to save the planet from further plunge and be able to achieve the desired goal of 1.5 degrees Celsius, and that's why we are here.
Now, Doctor, also when we look at these commitments, what measures are being put in place to cause people to comply? Because we've had a number of COPs, and one of the things that comes out is you set targets, but there are no enforcement mechanisms. And various analysts have come out every after COP to criticize that the commitments that you came up with are not being respected. So what enforcement, or is it going to be usual business? We come, we talk, you talk about commitments, then, for example, when you discuss coal, you know, these developed countries are still having these industries. Then you come to Africa and discuss fossil fuels. Many African countries are going into oil exploration. So what then? How do we strike? How serious are we?
Well, international law by its nature is soft law. International law by its nature is soft law. And so it can only be implemented through the goodwill of the countries that are making these commitments. Historically, we've seen that we have not even yet realized the global financing target of just 100 billion despite commitments. And so what you are saying is real, that we must be able to live up to our commitments. There is currently no mechanism that can be used to enforce apart from use of diplomatic channels and principles of international law. Of course, we have the International Court of Justice that can enforce such matters, but you cannot enforce a pledge. A pledge is a voluntary commitment, and so that may not be enforceable. It goes back to the roots of the morals, of the commitment, of the genuineness, of the seriousness of the country committing these pledges. But for legally binding commitments where we have resolutions, legally binding resolutions, these can be enforced at the International Court of Justice. So, but overall, international law is soft law, and it depends entirely on the sovereign willingness, which means the countries making these pledges, because they are the sovereign. There is no international sovereignty Sovereignty is at national level, and so it is these countries, it is you and me, to make sure that the pledges we make are not just empty promises, but real commitments to save the planet from going into a turmoil.
Now, you've talked about funding, that these countries that have huge emissions look at funding. What funding are you looking at, to be more specific? Because for most of these COPs, we've talked about carbon trade financing, which has never taken root. So this time round, what are you fronting? What nature of funding are you looking at?
The funding we are talking about here is funding for liability for loss and damage. What do I mean? Somebody will sit in maybe Beijing or New York or Berlin or Moscow, whichever you want to call it. They release emissions into the atmosphere. These emissions do not respect their national boundaries. They will come and affect you in Uganda. They will affect small island states in the oceans. And so what we are saying is that we must espouse the principle of polluter pay. He who pollutes must pay to manage the pollution impact. So the financing we are talking about is not voluntary pledges that we are seeing today. It's not development assistance that we are seeing today. It's not loans that we are seeing today. What we are saying is that the polluters must assume liability for loss and damage caused by their actions, and that's the money we have been pushing for as Uganda, as East Africa, as developing countries, and we are yet to achieve this dream. Of course, there are other monies like voluntary pledges from Scotland. You know, we failed to make the 100 billion. Even in Sharm el Sheikh, pledges were made. Even here, pledges have been made here in Dubai. For the first time, a fund has been set up for loss and damage, but the nature of the fund which has been set up is not the one that we desire. The fund we expected is a fund where there is a mandatory contribution depending on your level of pollution of the world, and this is not what we've seen so far. What we have seen is a fund, but whose contribution is going to still remain voluntary pledges, and historically we've seen that these pledges are not realized. So we continue to push. The negotiations aren't closed yet. We hope that we shall get what we deserve.
Now, talking about the loss and damage fund, this has been a dream for Africa. It's very unfortunate that you said what we are getting is not that. But also, even with these little funds available, accessibility remains a dream. You know, so how are you going to ensure accessibility as Uganda, East Africa, and Africa?
That's a very, very important point, and that's why we have been opposed to having such fund as an intermediary of multilateral development funds like World Bank and others, because these have their own bureaucracies, and accessing these funds is not entirely easy for countries like developing countries. Even the pledges we have seen, the 100 billion dream, Africa is not getting even 5% of it. Most of it is not coming to Africa because of red tape, bureaucracy, and the need to use it to leverage selling of loans, which further impoverishes the developing countries like Uganda and Africa. And so we must continue to demand funds which are easy to access. But it also comes back to us. We must ready ourselves. We must build our internal capacity to compete even for these voluntary funds, because we also need them. So we must up our game. We must develop proposals. We must train our people into tapping these small monies that are here and there.
Doctor, when you look at the fact that Uganda has got its first pavilion and offices with this COP28, what is happening? Just give us a picture of what is happening at this particular pavilion, and of what importance is it to us as a country?
Thank you very much. It's true, Uganda, for the first time in the history of UNCCC, has a pavilion in Dubai. What is a pavilion? A pavilion is really your address at the COP. it is the country address at the COP. A pavilion will have an office, a pavilion will have meeting place, a pavilion will have exhibition of what you have to offer. Now, we've had so many events to say what Uganda is doing to the world. We've had events on climate smart agriculture, we've had events on energy transition, we've had events on water resources management, we've had events on youth and climate change, on culture, on sustainable mining, on sustainable petroleum exploration and production. We've showcased the world what Uganda is doing in addressing the issues of climate change. We've showcased to the world investment opportunities in climate space and the socioeconomic transformation of our nation. And of course, we've exhibited to the world our culture, different cultures. Uganda Kingdom, for example, is here and they have showcased, and other cultures. So we have generally sold Uganda to the world at the COP, and we are talking about the entire world in one place. So it's an opportunity to expose the world to what Uganda is doing and what Uganda has to offer to the global discourse on the subject of climate change and green development in general.
Well, we've also had a huge delegation to COP28. How impactful has it been? Because when you look back here in Uganda, we've had a very huge public debate concerning the same regarding the number of delegates that went to COP28. Now, on this platform this morning, if you could ideally give the Ugandans a picture of the impact the delegation has had at COP28.
Well, first of all, we must clear the air first. I don't think Uganda has a big delegation. The 600, the 400 you journalists are reporting, first of all, is not true, because that's a list of accredited delegates. Now, accreditation means everyone who has applied to attend a meeting. It does not mean that it is people who are at the meeting. So that's a list of accreditation and not the list of attendees. That said, the list also includes the private sector, the civil society, the academia, the journalists. The list brings out every person from Uganda who is at the COP. So, but it has been portrayed as if these are a list of government delegates at the COP, which is not true. It is false. Having clarified that, the delegates here have had a lot of impact in the negotiations. Just to give you a glimpse of what the situation is like here, you have over 100 meetings going on at the same time, parallel meetings. And if you as a country, you are not represented, the rest of the people will move, they will not wait for you. So the meetings are so many, the events are so many, and so we believe that even the 600, even if we had them, would not represent Uganda very effectively. We have seen delegations that have 1,500 and they also still feel stretched. You have to negotiate from morning up to the wee hours of the night, sometimes up to 3 a.m. So you need people to work in shifts. That said, Uganda has successfully made progress on discussions for capacity building. We've made progress on discussions for adaptation. Global stock take up to now, we have a deadlock and negotiations are still going on. We've had successes in negotiations on gender. We've had successes on negotiations for least developed countries. We've had, of course, deals, as you are aware. We've signed investment deals, including in solar energy that you've seen, and so many others. So the delegation is doing its utmost best to ensure that Uganda's interests are secured.
Well, Doctor, many thanks for joining us this morning, and we are grateful for the company of your time, and we wish you all the best as you sum up with COP28 in the UAE.
Thank you.
All right, and that is Dr. Barirega Akankwasa, the ED NEMA. He was coming to us live from the United Arab Emirates, to be more precise, Dubai, where the COP28 is taking place. It is coming to an end on the 12th of November, which is tomorrow. Bigger conversations and discussions do continue, obviously, and we shall be waiting to see what are the commitments that was that were concluded with at the COP28, and maybe what is there to look up to with the COP29 that will be coming up as well later in the years to come. Well, Robert, your final take as we are summing up with this conversation.
Well, for me, I think we need to take issues of climate more serious. We need to ensure that we don't just have these commitments, but we live up to them. This has been the biggest challenge of the various conference of parties that we've had on climate change. That is more voluntary, brotherhood, diplomatic, you know. For example, we talk about the loss and damage fund, you know. This is something I highly anticipated for us to get, that the more you give to the environment, the more you pay. And Africa would stand better chances of this. But we just hope and pray that we leave lip service and diplomatic relations and we go to enforcing, because Mother Nature is not waiting. When you have these floods, it is not diplomacy. It is not the spirit of voluntarism. We need to move away from the dilly-dallying and move straight to action and serious action.
All right. Now, with the Russian invasion, you get to realize that the Eastern Bloc of Europe has been having issues on who will host COP29 come November 2024. And it does look like it will be hosted in Baku, that is in Azerbaijan, come next year. So, of course, we shall be waiting to see what other commitments will be made in 2024. As of now, that is it for the GMU agenda. Coming up next is Ruben Pima with sports this morning.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda.